Hey everybody, you're watching AfterBuzz TV's Legends of Tomorrow After Show. We're breaking down Season 1, Episode 12, Last Refuge. We'll be talking about Rip Hunter, the Artful Dodger. We'll be talking about awkward marriage proposals and even awkward sentences like that. And then lastly, cute little baby Snart. Stay tuned.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AfterBuzz TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
This might be too long to
Yes. Oh, but no. Everybody, let's just let Dave Child take us in right here.
It's a beautiful day.
Yes.
Hey, baby, I think I want to marry
Druce!
There you go, everybody. Had to wait for the Druce there. Welcome everybody to the Legends of Tomorrow After Show here on AfterBuzz TV. We'll be breaking down episode 12, The Last Refuge. We got the whole panel united again today to break down this episode. I'm your host, Frank Moran. You can follow me on Twitter at HappyGoJackie.
Hi, I'm also here. I am Lex Michael, all over social media at the Lex Michael.
Good Lord. I'm Dave Child. You can find me at Mr. Dave Child everywhere.
And I'm Lacretia Lyon, and of course, if you can spell it right, you can find me anywhere, and I'm only like half here.
There you go.
Cool.
Look at that. As we hear Marry You Playing There by Bruno Mars, I guess that's fitting there because we have that big proposal coming there
so
between Ken and
That
Ray.
sure does happen.
That's right. We'll be breaking that all down here as we talk about this episode. It's The Last Refuge. As we know from the last episode, the Pilgrim's involved. And when the Pilgrim's involved, bad things happen because she goes back into your past self and eliminates you there from the time
like
stream.
Pilgrims
babies.
do.
That's right.
Yeah.
Like Pilgrims, much like the Pilgrims from the past, she travels back in the past.
Here's my first question, because there are a couple of questions I have regarding tonight's episode, and maybe I just spaced at 1 or 2 points tonight. Did we ever cover why this character is called the Pilgrim?
No.
No.
I guess we Kronos is. that does have a time affiliation, but we never actually find out why this person who's the toughest of all the Time Master's henchmen is called the Pilgrim.
And right, at Kronos, obviously, there's the time travel connotation, but what is the time travel connotation with Pilgrim?
I
Do you remember that
seems
time we
racist.
colonized the place?
Yeah.
She's on a pilgrimage. Well, the Pilgrims had time powers, right? They were able to
yes.
freeze people and slow them down and move things backwards, and
Yes.
I think that's how they learned how to plant corn.
Or maize.
Or maize.
Yes.
The Mayflower was a time ship.
Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
time ship. That's the big secret behind it.
Because that's without there being much significance to the name as relates to her personality or anything she does, I would look to maybe her aesthetic, but there's nothing particularly colonial about her aesthetic
She
either.
should have at least wore a hat with a buckle.
Yes.
That would
A
have
nice
been
little
way
buckle.
better. Like, I did love how she had the puffy shoulders in her outfit to be more
Right.
pilgrimy, but,
Well, sadly, the only time we get to see the Pilgrim be truly effective is just at the beginning of the episode. When we're in Vanishing Point, we're getting a time pirate is being sentenced to the Omega Protocol, which means that the Pilgrim goes back into your past life and eliminates you then, thus eliminating you in the present. So, we see the Pilgrim actually go back and eliminate, and it looks like a painful thing when you get eliminated, your past self gets killed. Because it's, I guess, the ripples through time just are agonizing, I guess.
Yeah, the ripples through time are a little. I had a question about that because it seemed like when the ripples through time happened, they happened instantaneously. Like when Ray was in a fight in, what was it, 2014?
that would be season 3 of Arrow.
Yeah, so 2 years later, that Ray was getting terrible bruises. So the bruises lasted for a very long time.
Well, here's what I would think about that, right? So Pilgrim's idea, her plan, was to show up and kill him. So if hypothetically she had succeeded and killed Ray by, I guess, kicking him in the ribs a lot, then Ray never would have healed because he would have been dead. So those wounds would have stayed. Whereas he had the time after she failed in 2014 to go into a hospital and heal in real time. But cut to our present, he has had enough time to heal, so he heals more instantaneously in the moment.
So how does he get hurt so fast? How does his pain, if he had his arm chopped off, he would lose his arm.
Right.
You know, that would make sense. But since he got internal bruising and stuff, it's been 2 years since he had that beatdown. So why is he being affected at that moment?
Well, that's true. Yeah, that does make sense.
Yeah. So I don't know. If he was getting a tattoo or something permanent, like burned or something like that.
I think
They should have just chopped off a limb because he would have just grown the limb right back.
Right.
Yeah, like
Because
Leonard did.
yeah, they could just grow limbs like crazy on the ship. They could just have a limb party where just limbs
Could we
everywhere.
get Rip a third leg then? I mean, although 10-year-old Rip was a badass, but
As it turns out.
Bloody hell!
We do see, like, unlike past episodes, it seems like the whole cast is pretty much united in one sort of mission, which is
Right.
basically to save their past selves. And only time we break off into like separate stories is just for character moments, for better or for worse. But we have them going back into the past to try to save themselves. And their first stop is Central City in 1990 with young Rory, just
Little
watching
Rory.
watching that house burn.
Watching the world burn.
Yeah.
Yeah, we see a little bit of his. I like his past self. I like his storyline probably the most because I like seeing him as a guilt-ridden some pyromaniac and dealing with kind of the guilt of that, but also the love of fire. The one-on-ones with Rory that happen, older Rory that happen throughout the episode, are some of the most genuine moments that we've seen Rory have, and I think it's really nice to see that guy kind of try and grow.
Yes.
yeah, I love that they have made Mick Rory such a smart, more on the level with Snart.
Yeah.
Because the thing is this episode especially, we are really delving into what made him into Heatwave, and we actually care. Because, you know, Dominic Purcell is a great actor, and I like how they're not playing him as the meathead like they were in the beginning. They've given him more to do. He's kind of more on the level of the rest of the team.
More of a cooked meathead now.
Exactly.
And I think going into the
Yeah.
season, we probably, or even at the start as we were watching it, I think we were, at least I was, assuming that Snart was going to have more of the character journey, more character growth. But it seems like it's Rory that's had the bigger change so far this season.
Right.
Yeah, if
Yeah.
anything, Snart feels like, and I mean this in the best way possible, but Snart feels like he's increasingly a bit of a cartoon character, which I don't dislike
Well,
because
yeah, I love
he's
his
really,
art
Wentworth
again.
Miller
Mhm.
is so enjoyable to watch, and I really do. I like all of the mixed stuff as well, and I like it, like a lot of things in this episode, I like it a lot more as individual moments rather than a bigger arc. And as much as I liked that arc more than some other ones in this episode, it does, by the time you get to the end of it, bump into a lot of the
Right.
same issues that I think most of the other arcs did when we're talking about people on the ship, part of the team, dealing with past versions either of themselves or significant others.
Yeah, it's a lot of people repeating themselves and kind of talking to their past selves and trying to grow as a person. But we saw that happen with Snart earlier on in the series. So I think we saw his arc just super early, and I think his arc just ended, and now he's just kind of playing the background character.
Sure.
For a lot of he's like not. He just comes in and says something quippy or says something. He growls something, and I felt like he was on the same page as us when it comes to Rip in this episode, where I feel like Snart kept going in like, how convenient. It was like, ooh, things seem, who are you? What is your past? We know nothing about you. And I was like, yeah, that's what we've been saying for a while about when it comes to Rip.
There is that, and Snart has some moments like that from tonight's episode that I think are great because he is, in a way, a little bit being, like you say, the voice of certainly part of the audience that's watching. But then occasionally there will be moments where it feels like, oh, Snart hasn't quipped in too long. We got to give him something to say. And so he says something like, I may be an adorable baby. And then there's a pause, as if he really didn't think through. He just wanted to say something, but I'll be a handful.
Yeah, and the thing
A
is
cute baby.
he really was. I mean, even Sarah and Kendra thought he was adorable, which was
Yeah.
literally the only good Kendra scene. Because that's the
was
thing.
weird.
Yeah.
That was weird. I'm sorry. There's a couple of. That was a problematic moment for me in the show to have like the two female characters melt in front of a baby. I was just like, oh, come on. Do you think Sarah would really like look at a baby and go like, oh my I want to put him in my womb? It's just,
Yeah.
it
Maybe
just
Baby
felt
Snart.
weird.
That's the thing. That's exactly what I was going to say. I can buy it because it is Baby Snart. If it was anybody else, I feel like maybe I'd be reacting the same way that you
Yeah,
did.
maybe little Rory too, because they're fun together as well. But she has chemistry with everyone.
I would
Yeah.
believe it more if it was like Kendra and Ray. The Sarah thing just felt weird.
Because Sarah's a bigger man than Ray. Right?
All right. Well, Dave does bring up Kendra and Ray, so we have to.
I didn't mean we gotta.
Yeah,
Do we have to?
Way to go, Dave.
boy.
You called for it. And so now we have to do it. So as we were talking about before, when they go to try to save Ray, all of a sudden he starts well, first Ray's talking to Kendra and gets riddled all of a sudden with these bruises that start popping up on him. And I do like that Kendra, even though they know the Pilgrim is attacking them in their past lives, Kendra asks Rip, who's doing this? Who do you think is doing this, Kendra? We already know who this is. But they track down Ray back in 2014 and save him. But while they're doing that, Ray has the most awkward marriage proposal ever.
Right.
Right there as he's stuck in the med bay, surviving these injuries.
Yeah,
God.
basically Kendra was just like, oh, I love you. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. And he heard that and was like, you must have found the ring.
The what?
Like, no.
The what now?
Uh-oh. Oopsies.
Yes.
It's on the ground.
I
We
feel,
marry now. I'm Ray.
Man.
I feel like the writers hate us to an extent with this Ray and Kendra stuff because literally no one on the internet, especially in the chat and Twitter, no one on the internet buys this Ray and Kendra crap. And they like set you up to fail. You're like, yes, they're going to break up. No. That's a dick move.
I still think it's a good idea. And I think it was something that when they mapped out the season to have Kendra fall in love with someone on the ship, it made sense. I think they just had trouble setting it up and kind of putting the concrete into that foundation.
It's true. Well, we've talked about it before. And you
Yeah.
mentioned if they had set it up just with and introducing it during that 2-year time period.
Right.
Yeah, it
if
would've
they
made
had
way
done
more
that.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in the previous episode where Kendra has to deal with like, no, you really have trouble with any man that isn't your destined Carter. I think that's a great like trouble for her to face and dealing with destiny compared to what she wants. It's just not. It's not coming off well.
And there are moments where that egregiously to me seem to sell both characters a little bit short because I just don't think this relationship quite works. These moments, many of these moments feel very, very contrived. And then there's this moment that comes late in the episode tonight where they have this conversation where Ray was lurking in the hallway and he heard Kendra talking to Sarah about how I'm not sure and this and this and this. And Ray says, okay, you thought I was dying, and if you need an out, then you have an out. And there was a moment where it seems like, I want to be with you, but I don't know. And he has this line about, well, all right, if you want to be happy, then be happy. Or you're going to listen to some other version of yourself that believes in curses. And the way he said it just seemed a little flip, considering this guy has seen magic wielders in person on more than one occasion.
And
he
also,
knows Malcolm Merlin.
yeah, and also it's like, dude, she's an older version of her. Like, she should probably have listened to her a little bit. It kind of makes sense, even though it's like a younger or older version because of the weirdness. I do want to point out there's a great hashtag popping up on the live chat right now called #Hawkward. That is golden. Whoever was the first to say that, I can't tell because there's quite a few people putting awkward now. But it is great. It's a good one.
Yeah, because that perfectly describes their relationship. Because, like, literally every moment they have, other than those 2 years that we really didn't see much of, has been incredibly awkward and weird. They have no chemistry. The story is terrible, and it doesn't serve their characters at all. Because I love Ray, and to be honest, Kendra had potential, but this just really makes her look bad, especially as a woman. It's like, you haven't been single except one episode of your entire existence in this Berlanti-verse.
You don't need a man to validate you.
It's like, chick, just drop it.
I mean that, even though I sounded very sarcastic.
Yeah.
But it's only because...
So, all right.
Yeah.
Now, we do find out that Pilgrim has some restrictions on her ability to go through and try to murder our heroes in the past, is the fact that she can only have one attempt in each person's lifetime because multiple attempts are going to screw up the time continuum. So they know as long as they stop her one time, they're safe for each person.
So they figure out, at the beginning of the first half of the episode, they can track where she's going to hit in time. So they're able to pinpoint exactly, like with Rory burning down the house. That's the song we should have picked. But then and then later with Sarah, just right when she's at the police station surrounded by policemen. I guess that was like a good point.
And speaking of, we get to see Blackthorn show up as Quentin Lance with hair, which was fun.
And we get to see Sarah back with that nice little bangs. Rocking those
Bangs.
sweet bangs.
Bangs. I got bangs. That means she's young. That was nice.
Did you notice too? Did it look like in a few shots they digitally de-aged her
I
slightly?
think they did
Yeah.
a little bit. She was a little shiny. She had that like CGI shine to her.
Yeah, it looked like they de-aged her a little bit. But then watching young Sarah and young Mick play off of each other was very amusing.
Yes.
There was a choice that's made when they rescue baby Martin, and it actually leads to a couple of my favorite moments in the episode because I love they seem absurd but intentionally so. Where it's not they go to rescue baby Stein and baby Stein is being born in 1950 on the side of the road, and Rip and Rory just come in and take
Rip and
The
Rory.
baby.
and just take the baby. And I believe later they're having this in the next scene. They're having this exchange about. So wait, they just let you take the baby? Well, the 1950s were a far more trusting time.
Yeah, I love how it's Ray telling Stein about that because of those 2 years he spent in the 50s. Like, and it was a funny, awkward little moment between them because Ray is cute with his naivety, but
I think Ray still
Yeah.
wants to be in the 1950s. I
yeah.
think he loved the 1950s.
Well, he does. He keeps talking about that's this place
Yeah.
that he goes back to now in his mind when he needs to feel a little bit calmer, a little more. When he needs to go to a simpler place, a place that grounds him a little bit. He goes back to that place in his mind.
Right.
Well, we do have the other, as we're talking about Stein and Ray being having that discussion. They're doing it at the hospital where young baby Jax is born, and that's our bigger, I guess, of all the other storylines. Next to Rory's, probably the other one that has most emotional impact is Jax. We do learn that he never really knew his father. His father, as far as he knew, never saw him born because he had deployed and then was killed 2 weeks later in Mogadishu.
Mogadishu, yeah.
Yes, but then when he comes, he does find out that his dad did get away, get a little pass to get over there and see him born, and sees him outside the maternity ward, and has a little chance to talk to his dad.
Which I think if you take it, especially if you take it in a vacuum, I actually think this was a really sweet scene. And it is really nice that Jax actually gets more to do. He gets a little bit more of an emotional arc in this episode than we see him get in a lot of shows.
Bit more of a background,
Yeah.
too.
The resolution of this arc, I think, bumps up against the same thing that makes me tilt my head slightly is the resolution of a couple of the other arcs in this episode, so we can touch on that when we get there. But I did think it was really nice to see him have a little bit more to play emotionally than we're used to seeing.
Yeah, I think the
Right.
challenge with such a large cast is that it's, you want to serve everybody, but on episodes like this where you want to be able to really dig deep into some emotional moments between these characters, it's hard to do with so many people to service.
Yeah, I wish they would do more like The Walking Dead, as I know I've said this before, but whatever, I'll beat this dead horse. Or Walking Dead horse. But the thing is they should do more like, say, this is more of a Mick and Jax episode. So let's focus on them instead of adding like the Kendra and Ray stuff. Or, I mean, as much as I enjoyed the Sarah stuff, we could have done that and split this into two and had more like with her and Stein and all that. Because, yeah, they just try to service everybody, and it really kind of falls flat. Because it was great to give Jax a story. I really, got to know his character, which we really haven't. And to know about his dad and all that was really great.
Yeah, honestly, though, it was kind of the brevity of it was also kind of nice. How it was just kind of a moment between these past characters, and they are trying to build up something with Ray and Kendra that's lasting over quite a few episodes. Like, we're definitely going to get Carter coming in here
Of course.
soon. So they have to build up to, like, something, and they're trying to lay this groundwork that doesn't really exist, but they're trying to build it up. So that's why they had to, like, address them in this episode still. But it just wasn't as successful.
One thing I find is maybe a little frustrating because when we started the series, we see Carter eliminated incredibly quickly. And I thought that
Right.
really sets the
Up top.
stakes for the series. But since then, we've seen anybody with Kronos, now we know, of course, being Rory, but
Right.
also the Pilgrim, set up to be these really incredibly difficult or tough, badass characters that basically are ineffectual. And same thing here with the Pilgrim.
We
Other
saw
than
we saw with the Hunters last week, too.
Yes. Other than the Pilgrim at the top of the episode, killing, getting rid of a time pirate, once she goes up against our cast, though, we don't see really any stakes. And I mean, certainly you don't want anybody from the cast just written off, but it's, I think it would make this show a little bit more. I would sell it, the storyline and the stakes. If you saw somebody get eliminated this episode, somebody didn't make it back.
I agree. I do think that, and even Vandal Savage as the overarching major threat of the season, I feel like all of these threats are being established largely as backdrop or window dressing, if you will, because I think the main point is we're just on the ship hanging out with these guys going on a crazy time journey, which works, and it does just the presence of an antagonist, even if it's not an especially especially well-developed antagonist, leads us to getting sequences. And we got another one tonight, and I'm going to jump ahead a little bit.
Oh, yes.
For all of the individual quibbles that anybody, us included, may have about tonight's episode, tonight, like many of these episodes do, ended with what I thought was a wonderful, fun, and really visually exciting use of all of the heroes' powers. Again, and we got to see because Pilgrim has this ability where she can basically ripple time and
Yes.
stop their attacks as they're moving. It's like, it reminded me of Kylo Ren stopping the blaster bolt, except she was doing it in 6 different places. That was very, very cool.
Definitely.
And that's why I
And
feel
they
like I
all
say this every
froze in their perfect action figure pose.
Yes, of course. You get these sweeping, these
They're
camera
just
moves. You get these tie-in shots of everybody, and it's really, really cool. And I feel like I say a version of this every week. This is the stuff I tune in for, and it keeps giving it to me, which it pleases me.
Yeah, well, and somebody that is part of that scene is young Rip Hunter as well. And so we do
Right.
find out as much as Snart, as Dave was saying, that Snart is making all those condescending remarks throughout the episode that we don't know anything about you. Basically, with the Pilgrim puts all the other heroes' loved ones in play as potential targets if they don't surrender, Rip offers him his younger self up.
Yeah, and we should mention that he puts all the younger people in a place called the Refuge, which is run by this mom character. Did she have a name?
Mother. She's just referred to
Just
as
mother, yeah. I love that the Time Masters have a place that they kind of grow people in this refuge area.
Yeah, because we find out Time
like
Masters are
Xavier
basically
School.
like orphans. They're kind of
Yeah.
plucked throughout time there and then brought to this refuge.
And I also like how unfazed she is with older versions coming back and interacting with younger versions and having, talking to Rip while she's also still raising Rip, and how cool she is with that because that's just what Time Masters have to deal with. So that was a nice little world building moment and something we didn't quite get to see more of stuff with the Time Masters, of the backbone of where the Time Masters are coming from, and something I haven't seen before. That's not something I've ripped into this pun not intended for the past of stealing a lot of stuff from Doctor Who, or how it feels like it's taking a lot of stuff from Doctor Who. That's something I haven't seen in Doctor Who. It didn't seem strikingly familiar from any Doctor Who thing, so that was really nice to see, that a nice original time building thing.
And I did like the use of young Rip because we do get to learn about Rip's upbringing a little bit more, and we learned a lot about Rip last episode as well, about why he wanted to stay in Salvation and why it was
with
so
the
hard for
Western
him to
stuff. Yeah.
And now if you take it all as one big picture about how he used to be a cut purse, I believe is the term. he used.
Yes.
He was a cut purse who then eventually became so into the idea of heroism that he almost stayed in the Old West for all time because he couldn't get enough of being a hero. That's a really compelling arc. And what I also thought was cool is we see little Rip, and you see him immediately, and they treat it a little bit later as if it's a bit of a reveal. I thought immediately this must be young Rip, and I knew, of course, there had to be some ploy in place because if you kill one of your main characters, if you kill Rip Hunter, who's going to fly the ship and explain the time rules?
Right.
But what I did not see coming is that the ruse would directly involve the little boy stabbing the lady.
Yeah, that was
Yes.
awesome.
I was like, whoa, okay.
See, Rip wasn't always a pussy.
Oh, yikes.
I just went and said it anyway.
Oh, yeah.
The young Rip, I do have to say, I found his accent to be hilarious because I feel like that was definitely an American kid that's working on his British accent, and it was very much like, "Oh, I just came off of Oliver, yeah, oh bloody hell!" It just was.
But given the way that he
Perfect.
looked, I was not, much like Lex, I was not expecting him to be pulling out a knife and sticking
Right.
it into the
No.
pirate's leg. I thought,
That was
all
fun.
right, nicely done.
Yeah, that was cool.
And then it's like she gets hit by everyone's powers at once and literally disintegrates out of existence.
Yeah.
That is pretty dope. And I don't know what more from a comic book show I could want than that.
Which again, it reminded me of last week when Ray flew through a dude.
Yes.
It felt like in this week they're also just out disintegrating people. I'm like, this is turning dark.
It's
They're
I like
killing
that.
people
So
now.
it just
Yeah.
looks so cool.
Yeah, and it also makes sense. I mean, the team is mostly made up of dark people, or people that come from dark backgrounds.
Yeah, like Leonard and Mick and Sarah.
Yeah.
Well, and the issue too is, especially when you're dealing with villains that time hop all over the place, you can't just tie them up somewhere and then jump 100 years and assume they won't be right behind you. These are threats that you effectively have to stop. I mean, you can't just take them down temporarily. You have to take them down.
Right.
And one person that, one of the loved ones that is taken out of time is Ray's former fiance, his deceased fiance, Anne. And so
This was a little weird to me.
yeah, and so we get to see her. I mean, essentially, the first time we've only heard her talked about. We've never seen her before. She's only talked to Felicity about Anne and her dying, and so we've never actually seen her talking it ever. And so this is the first time to actually see her live action. And all she is just relegated to the background.
We see her in the background of one shot, and I
Yes.
thought, too, if we want to spend all this time with Ray and Kendra, what a fascinating wrinkle it would be to introduce Anna into that equation.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. That would have been more interesting than this just, talking about Carter. I mean, that's the thing is like, here's someone here. Why didn't they go for that? But, I mean, this is, Brandon Roost's character, even in Chuck, same thing. Dead fiance. Like, this dude can never win. And apparently the chat wants us to talk about Rachel Talalay, I think is her name, who directed the episode. They're just all, saying maybe we might have something nice to say about her direction. I don't know.
I do.
Yeah,
I think
it was great.
The quibbles that I have are largely to do with the script, and even in that case, they're largely relegated to a couple of very specific points. I actually thought this episode was very well directed, specifically, like I said, when you get to the big piece at the end, because we now see so many, whether it's on TV every week. DC, when their shows are all on, they have a show 4 nights a week where we see comic booky action. We're seeing it at the movies now all the time. It's all over the place, and it's getting harder and harder and harder as the ante gets upped and upped and upped as far as production quality. It's getting a lot harder to show us something that we haven't seen or haven't seen multiple times. So I thought the way, especially the battle at the end, was directed, I thought was very, very innovative and cool. And it shows me something that I certainly haven't seen on television, I think, ever.
Yeah, apparently she directed Tank Girl as well, which is one of my
cool.
favorite
really?
cult movies. So, yeah. Cool. I've learned something in the chat today.
I wish there was a bit more tank girliness.
Yeah,
in this
exactly.
episode,
More
to
like
tell the
cheesy,
truth.
like Ice-T pops up as a kangaroo. Like,
We needed more
Yeah,
kangaroo. We
definitely.
needed more Ice-T as a kangaroo in
Yeah,
this
and
episode.
I guess it kind of goes back to my thought about there being too many characters to service some storylines for all of them. Because since Anna being back was such a key part of Ray's origin, to have her introduced into the show and never have a moment to have them see each other again, I just like.
Right.
But then you think like, well, didn't you lose Jack's storyline, or do you lose Rory's storyline? So like, who do you take away to give that to? And it's just one of those things where you have a dearth of characters. So who do you take away to be able to show more?
yeah, this should have been a 2-parter because, yeah, I was definitely down with the Rory and Jack stuff for sure. And even the little bit of Rip would have been fine, like as the C story. But yeah, like as much as I love Sarah, like, that certainly took away from it. So we could have definitely, I love seeing Captain Lance anytime.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
Right.
like we should have had her and Ray later,
I also thought they were going to build something like, is young Rory and young Sarah going to have like a fling or something? Or are they going to have, why bring her into it at all? And they didn't really do anything with young Sarah or anything like that. It didn't feel like it was just an excuse to kind of visit old episode of Arrow for a second.
It was, but this goes back to what I was saying a few minutes ago, where I think it's all largely directly in service of let's just hang out with these characters in this situation. Let's hang out with them with their time-displaced younger selves. So it doesn't. I see what you're saying, and if we're talking strictly like as a piece of text, like structurally, I don't know. But it's just another fun scenario for them to hang out in and watching, because we have spent a lot of time now with the characters like Sarah and with Heatwave. We've spent seasons of television with these characters, and we now, I feel like, because of Legends of Tomorrow, we understand these characters a lot better than maybe we did on the shows that they came from. So watching different iterations of them play different aspects of their own personalities off of each other, it's interesting as a hangouty type thing.
We do have the one scene there on the Wave Rider where actually when we see young Sarah and young Rory getting a little altercation, and present-day Sarah comes down to interrupt that. And young Sarah just wants to know, who are you? Why do you look like me? And she goes, oh, I'm just family. And I'm trying to think, like, if I saw somebody that looked pretty much just like me, I don't know. I think I would assume. I think I'd make the leap to make. I think you're me from the future. I don't know. Would you guys? I don't know. It's hard to think.
I totally would.
I wouldn't, especially since I have like a brother that looks like me who's like 3 years older than me. So I would be like, oh crap, what did my dad do? Because I would just assume I had like older family or something that pops up, because I look like my brother. We both look like my dad. So I just would assume that maybe we're related somehow. So
Yeah.
that we're related would be enough for me to be.
My bigger question about, I don't know if it's that same scene or the scene immediately after. It's when you almost think they're going to escape because the ship recognizes Sarah's DNA, and they
Yes.
come in with Baby Stein. And they don't hand Baby Stein to the girl who made $5,000 last year babysitting.
No.
They hand it to the boy who burned down his house, killing both of his
Yeah.
parents.
Yes.
That was like, okay.
Oh yeah, that was young Snart. Yeah, because then Rory says like,
Would've
yeah.
given it- was Young Star. Okay,
Yes.
I would have given it to the other one. But then, Rory says, don't drop my future crime partner.
Yeah.
Right.
That was so cute how he cared.
And I also did in that scene. Sarah says, "Don't worry, your dad's never gonna lose you." And
He does,
Like
he does
twice.
twice, and then loses the other one.
Yeah.
yeah. Whoops.
By the
We
way,
like Sarah Maureen.
do we know, because this isn't really something that they've addressed on Legends because they've been flying through the time stream so much.
Right.
Does Sarah know? I'm sorry, spoilers if we don't watch Arrow. I'll
Yeah,
phrase it this
just-
way. Does Sarah know that somebody that she should be aware is no longer alive?
Not yet. I mean,
I don't
they
think
haven't
so.
addressed it.
From what I've read, it's supposed to be some kind of touch point where she does learn somewhere in the season that something's
Okay.
happened. Yeah.
And I
But
get
currently, no.
why. She's very busy and she's probably very hard to reach.
Yeah, that's true.
I was hoping because I've heard that we're going to see more alternate timelines. And so I was hoping that maybe this was going to be a setup for an alternate timeline like they do incapacitate Rip. And so everything he's done to the timeline does get messed up. And so we get to see alternate versions. Maybe they're leading up to that because they still have their baby selves and they have to... The idea for the next episode is they have to stop Vandal Savage and then put their baby selves back. I'm not very sure about the rules of that.
Yeah, because
That's
I guess
very
at
up
the
in
end
air.
of the episode, we do learn from Martin talking to his wife that she has forgotten him. And so Rip tells everybody else that time is starting to set now. Taking you out of the time stream, everybody's starting to forget you. Those loved ones are forgetting who you are. And it's going to happen much faster than if we just try to hunt down Savage. We're not going to be able to take our time hunting him down. We've got to go directly to where he's most powerful, 2166, where we know for sure he's going to be.
But my question about that is, now that you've dealt with the Pilgrim, couldn't you put baby selves back? Or do they assume they sent the Pilgrim didn't work, now we're going to send like 5 Pilgrims to go after the babies twice as hard if they're where we know they are?
Yeah, because I guess if the deal is they can only go into each timeline once, is that once per assassin or once just in total for that person's lifetime?
Right.
So yeah, that's the one thing we're not sure of.
I don't know. I think we need to roll a Dungeons and Dragon dice and see about the darkest timeline for my community fans.
What I would like to see too a bit, because of how much we dance around the idea of this may cause a time paradox, this may cause the timeline to rupture. I would like to see before this season is out an example of what the timeline starting to rupture looks like, specifically because of how frequently and wantonly this entire team does stuff that in theory should rupture the timeline.
Yeah.
Well, I do like is that we get down to the end of the episode when they're giving people amnesia pills, and we find out like, well, who's going to try to maybe change some of their loved ones' futures? And we see that with Jax and his father most directly. That and young Rory too. But I feel like the biggest change is certainly with Jax and his father, where Jax kind of tells him, hey, be on the lookout for when this happens back in this year. Look out for that IED. Keep your head on a swivel. I mean, but I did like when Rip talks to him. Usually Rip comes down on everybody, but this time I guess because it's a loved one, he said maybe time wants you to be with your father.
Well, and so this
It's
is
also, I think, Rip, when you address, hey, maybe I just saved a member of my family to
Yes.
Rip, I think he's like, I'm not gonna, I mean.
I can't.
Yeah, he
I
can't
to.
really
Sure.
say anything because that's the whole purpose of this freaking show, right?
For sure, but also I'm willing to explore the idea. Like the interpretation that I like is that it's possible that Rip. I mean, and he's done it before, where he talks about time as if it's a thing with sentience, with awareness, and it's possible. He says, "Well, it's possible that maybe this happened because time does want to see you and your father reunited. So it is possible that they did this without destroying all of time." Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it ties into my love for Quantum Leap when he does when
Yes.
Sam Beckett leaps back and he gets a chance to save his brother in Vietnam. I mean, that's one of my favorite episodes. So
And, you know, but
It also reminds me of that new show on Hulu with James Franco where he's trying to
oh,
stop
yeah.
the
Frank did the
Kennedy
after show.
assassination.
Yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me of that too, where time is just always working against him.
What I would think more than even Jax and his father potentially being reunited, though, is Mick tells young Mick that he is him.
yes.
okay, I feel like growing up knowing that you're going to meet your future self on a time ship is a weird thing to burden a
Future
kid with.
self and me.
Could definitely make stuff go a little wonky for you, but maybe the weirdest thing to me about this episode, and granted, we're dealing with a version of the character years in the past from the version I'm most familiar with, but it's Quentin Lance going, yeah, I'll take an amnesia pill. that part seems super bizarre.
Yeah, and also, why is he the only one that gets an amnesia pill?
Yeah.
Everyone else are like, nothing we can do about it. I'm like, but you have amnesia pills.
Forget me nows, I believe they're called in Arrested Development.
Well, it's not that he's the only one that's given one, because they talk about we have them. It's like an amnesia pill from Rip. But it seems like Quentin's the only one who says, yeah, sure. I feel like I'd want to know this stuff.
Well, I guess
He had an alcohol problem, so.
Yeah, he's just like, another drug? Yeah, great. I'm used to waking up from blackouts.
Oh, boy.
But I also think it's from a young Detective Lance who hasn't seen his daughter supposedly die, swept off off to sea with Oliver Queen. So, I mean, for that, he's still a little bit more happy-go-lucky kind of guy.
And he's kind of probably happy, like, oh man, look at how badass my daughter is saving people. It's great.
Yeah, I had one good one.
I guess, and then I'm wondering too if Sarah did already know about this death that I keep dancing around referencing.
Yeah.
Specifically, does she handle that situation differently? Does she? I'm leaning so far into this thing, I'm trying not to spoil. But
You know what? I
she-
think we might have
Surely
spoiled it in the
they've
previous.
seen
So anyway, over on Arrow, Laurel's dead. So
Spoiler.
spoilers for a show from a couple of weeks ago, and that's Sarah's sister. So I'm wondering, maybe if she knows this already, does she maybe not give him the amnesia pill to spare him the pain of losing her twice before he loses Laurel? I don't know. Maybe.
I don't know. It'll be curious to see what happens when we get to the end of the season to see how time has been affected. Is Jax's father going to be there? It's tough to tell with Rory. I mean, Rory is certainly different now as a character, given everything that he's done with the Time Masters, than he was at the beginning as his younger self. So he has gone through a change. Whether him telling his younger self that to be even better than that is going to result in more of a different change, I don't know. And if that was the case, wouldn't it, the ripples would start happening if he started making those conscious choices?
He would just become like a happier dude all of a sudden.
Yeah, he starts dressing up in like nice suits and stuff. Yeah.
Did you see my bow tie? I wear a bow tie now. It's like, oh no, we've changed too much in the
I
time.
thought that was Berry Stick.
He has like hair all of a sudden.
He's like, whoa, what?
Oh no.
So we end, as we said, the episode, they're heading to 2166, where Vandal Savage is at the height of his power because they're running out of time.
Right, which is a bit confusing because I'm wondering why they're facing him at the height of his power and not, as we brought up, going way back in time to ancient Egypt where he doesn't even have powers. But, that would change a bit too much of the time stream, so I guess they're trying to still avoid that in someone's mind.
I guess. But I guess that is a good way for us, as we're speculating things, to lead us into some predictions.
Yeah, any predictions?
And now, your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
Lacretia, what do you think's happening?
Oh God! I hate to be a negative Nancy, but whatever. I
Do you though?
I usually do. I like to be happy-go-lucky, but I'm kind of thinking that maybe they will kill Kendra off at the end and bring because the thing is, she has to die for him
Think
to
they're
be
gonna-
reincarnated.
No, I don't think they
And-
do. I think they just
yeah.
have to find a Carter from a different time period.
Yeah, they can do that too, but
Yeah.
I'm like, they may go that route because as much as they're leading up with this Ray and Kendra relationship, I'm like, something bad is going to happen other than him coming back.
Yeah.
I think, and that's why I'm like, I kind of think they may have killed this Kendra off.
True,
And
because I
then
feel
bring-
like
yeah.
I feel like everybody on the cast, in terms of that, you could kill off Kendra knowing that she's going to reincarnate.
Right.
You could,
Yeah.
killing everybody else, you're kind of writing them off the show.
Sure. In fact, you almost might. Maybe we throw Kendra out the airlock and then jump 100 years in the future and go get new Kendra and new Carter and then go fight Vandal Savage.
Yeah,
Just start
and
from,
maybe they're
start
better.
from scratch. Just a montage of them training them how to be
Yeah.
rock people.
And different ones too. So they train one for a while. This is not working. They throw them both out the airlock. And they go get two new ones.
See, now that
that's
would
a-
be fun.
That's a very much of a Venture Brothers
Yeah.
type moment, I think. That's perfect for that. But yeah, I expect we're going to see Carter pretty soon coming up. Aren't we supposed to see Flash at some point?
Yeah, I want to see Old Barry and
Old Barry.
and then
Barry,
older
fastest
Wally
man of the
as the
water.
Flash. Yeah, I mean,
Right.
yeah, because there's 3 Flashes, so. And
Yeah, maybe we'll see some Wally as Flash. Yeah, it's that's what I'm kind of expecting. I want to see some alternate timelines. I want them to see kind of try to go back to the present, and then something is screwed up, so they have to find out where they screwed up and reverse that. That would be nice. Some fun time travel stuff, and I want to see more action because I liked last week's episode better than this week's episode because they got to play with guns, play with action, play with all that stuff. Well, in this one, they focused on emotion, which is good, but I kind of like the action better. So
Me too.
I want that.
Well, to what you're saying, Dave, if the promo is any indication for next week's episode,
Right.
they using the ship as their weapon, they're going to fight a giant time robot. Which
Finally.
again, that is all I need from this show to be perfectly happy.
Yeah.
That it'd be interesting to see with 4 episodes left. I mean, and they're going to the height of their power. Is it going to be a 2-parter? Is it going to? And then where does that leave us to go to really ramp up for the season finale? Like if
Right.
you're already facing him at the height of his power and it doesn't succeed, then where do you go? I'll be curious to see where it's going to lead us to the season finale.
Or maybe they succeed, but then that doesn't fix the rest of the timeline because it's towards the end of the timeline.
It'd be interesting to find out.
Okay.
In fact, as we're questions that we may have and questions that we will ask next week when we're talking to Sarah Nicole Jones, who's going to be here in studio. She is the writer and producer of next week's episode. She's a producer on the series, but she wrote next episode specifically. So we'll have her in studio next week. We're going to be asking her questions about that episode in particular, but the whole series in general. So if you have any questions you want to make sure that we ask Sarah while she's in studio, make sure you hit us up on Facebook or tweet us. We'll make sure we answer your questions, or follow us in the live chat during the airing. We'll ask her those questions as well too.
Or write a comment on the on this week's viewing.
Or Dave Child will give his address at the end. Send him a letter.
Sure.
Send him a written letter.
And he will interpret a dance based on your question.
Which is what I always do.
And so that's going to do it for us here for Legends of Tomorrow, this after show for Last Refuge. If you want to continue the conversation, like us on Facebook, give us those sweet 5 stars on Twitter, or follow us or on iTunes. Follow us on Twitter, continue the conversation. Lacretia, where can they follow you?
again, it's Lacretia Lyon anywhere on the internet since there is only one.
To find me at Mr. Dave Child. There's a couple of Dave Childs, but I'm the only Mr.
I am Lex Michael, all over social media at the Lex Michael. I'm gonna miss you guys for the next 2 shows. Work commitments are keeping me elsewhere in the time stream. But I am going to be back after a couple-week absence to reveal that I was in fact Kronos the entire time.
What?
Not?
Oh my goodness, you can follow me on Twitter at HappyGoJackie. We'll see you next week with Sarah Nicole Jones right here in the AfterBuzz Studios talking about Legends of Tomorrow. See you then.
Bye.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Druce!
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.